The last evening of the year arrived with a softness that felt almost deliberate, as though time itself wished to lay down its burdens quietly before stepping into something new. In Lantern Hill, the small mountain town that nestled between dark pines and pale ridgelines, winter had already settled deep into the bones of every roof and path. Snow lay thick upon the streets and the low stone walls, rounding each edge into gentler shapes. The sky held a deep blue that seemed brushed onto the air with a calm hand, and in that blue, the first faint stars waited, half hidden behind drifting cloud. The town did not fight the cold, it accepted it. And in accepting it, it seemed to become more peaceful, more hushed, more like a fairy tale told in low voices beside a warm stove. From early afternoon, snow had fallen in slow, patient veils, not in wild gusts, but in steady, quiet motions. Flakes drifted down like feathers, turning lazily as they came, then settling into place as if they had been invited to rest. They gathered on window ledges and fence posts, on the sloping shoulders of roofs, on the bare twigs of small trees that lined the lanes. They softened every sound. Wagon wheels, when they passed, made no harsh clatter, only a muted whisper. Footsteps became gentle, as though the street itself wished to cradle them. Even the wind, moving through chimneys and around corners, seemed to breathe more slowly, a calm exhale that did not disturb the town's quiet. As dusk thickened, candlelight began to bloom behind frosted panes. It appeared first in the bakery, where a warm glow spread over flour-dusted shelves, then in the little homes that faced the square, and finally in the narrow houses tucked along the hillside roads. Each window held its own small warmth, and together they formed a soft necklace of gold around the town's heart. Paper lanterns, saved for the last evening of the year, hung from hooks by doorways and porch beams. They swayed lightly when the air shifted, their thin skins catching the candlelight from within and turning it into a gentle amber glow. The lanterns looked like small moons lowered to human height, close enough to touch, close enough to guide someone home. At the edge of the square stood a modest workshop with a small sign painted in careful letters: T. Marlowe Watches and Clocks. The window of the workshop glowed warmly, not bright like a shop in a bustling city, but soft and inviting, as though it were meant to be seen through falling snow. Behind that window, Thomas Marlowe moved quietly among shelves and benches, his figure steady and unhurried. He was a man of gentle habits and patient hands, the kind of person who learned the language of small sounds and small motions, ticks and clicks, springs and teeth of gears, the faint sigh of a pendulum as it swung. Time, for him, was not an abstract thing. It was something he could hold, listen to, adjust with care, and set back into a calm rhythm. The workshop itself was narrow, but full of quiet wonders. Clocks lined the walls like attentive faces. Some were tall and solemn, with pendulums that swung behind glass. Others were small and round with delicate hands that moved almost imperceptibly. On the central workbench lay an array of tools arranged with neat precision. Tiny screwdrivers, slender tweezers, a magnifying lens, soft cloths, and small tins that held springs and pins like silver seeds. A kettle rested on a small stove in the corner, sending up a faint thread of steam that made the air smell of warm metal and tea. In the lamplight, dust motes drifted lazily, turning and glinting as if they, too, were part of the snow outside. Thomas moved as though he did not wish to startle any of the clocks, as though their steady ticking was a kind of sleeping music that must not be interrupted. His hair, once dark, had softened into a quiet gray that caught the lamplight in a gentle sheen. His hands were strong but careful, broad-palmed and steady, with fingers that had learned to be delicate without ever trembling. He wore a simple wool coat over his shirt, the sleeves rolled slightly at the wrist, and when he leaned toward a clock, his expression was calm and thoughtful, his eyes attentive in a way that felt protective. He listened more than he spoke. He noticed the smallest details, a pendulum's swing that fell just a fraction short, the slight drag of a second hand when it passed a certain point, the tiny unevenness in a tick that told him a gear was asking for oil. This evening, he was not working on a grand repair. The last customer before the holiday had come early, and their clock, an old walnut piece with a slow, dignified face, had already been settled into good health. Now Thomas was closing the year in the quiet way he preferred. He wiped his bench with a cloth, returning each tool to its place with the soft, satisfying care of someone who believes order is a form of kindness. He checked the small wall clock above the door and listened to its steady beat. He looked, almost without thinking, toward the tall clock at the back of the shop, whose pendulum moved with an even, soothing rhythm, left and right, like breathing. The sounds of these clocks together formed a gentle chorus, a layered hush of time passing without urgency. Outside, the world deepened into night. Snow continued to fall. Thomas stepped to the window and brushed aside the edge of the curtain, peering out. The street was nearly empty now, the townsfolk having retreated indoors to warmth and quiet preparations. A man with a shovel cleared a narrow path from his doorstep to the lane, moving slowly as if savoring the peacefulness of the task. Farther down, a child stood briefly in the snow, bundled in wool, staring at the paper lantern over their door as if it were a tiny sun. The child's mother called softly from within, and the child turned back, leaving a trail of small prints that the snow immediately began to soften. Candlelit windows glowed through frost like captured embers. The square itself looked like a gentle bowl filled with white, with the church tower rising beyond it, dark against the blue night. A faint sound drifted to Thomas through the muffled air, the distant note of a bell, not the full church bell, but a small one, perhaps someone closing a shop door, perhaps a chime hung over a porch. The sound was swallowed quickly by the snow, but it left behind a feeling of closeness, as if the town were stitched together by these tiny signals. Tomas felt that closeness keenly. Lantern Hill was not large, and people knew one another's rhythms. They knew who rose early and who slept late, who liked to hum when they worked, who left a candle burning in the window for comfort. On the last evening of the year, these rhythms mattered even more because time itself seemed to become a shared thing, a gentle river that everyone floated on together toward the next shore. He let the curtain fall back into place and turned to the bench again. In a small wooden box he kept beneath the counter were his traveling tools, the ones he carried when the town called on him to set time right in homes where clocks had begun to drift. It was a simple box, worn smooth at the edges from years of use, and inside it lay a tidy selection: a small oil bottle, a key for winding, spare hands, a cloth, and a magnifying lens tucked into a leather wrap. Tomas drew the box out and opened it, breathing in the familiar scent of oiled wood and metal. The town's clocks would be checked tonight, he knew. On New Year's Eve, people wanted their timepieces to agree, to cross midnight together, as if the shared chime of the new year could bring harmony to the days ahead. Tomas did not believe in grand magic, not in the loud sense, but he believed in the quiet magic of alignment, of small things made steady. He believed that when a clock ticked correctly, a room felt calmer, as though the walls and the air could rest. He placed the box on the bench and began to inspect its contents, not because they needed it, but because the act itself was soothing. His hands moved slowly. He checked the oil bottle's cap, ensured the cloth was clean, tested the winding key in his palm. He set his magnifying lens aside and ran his fingers along the edge of a small notebook, one he carried in his coat pocket. In this notebook, he wrote down the houses he visited, the clocks he had adjusted, and on nights like this, the quiet wishes people sometimes shared while he worked. Tomas never asked for those wishes. They arrived naturally, whispered like secrets into the warm space between ticking and silence. He wrote them down not to hold them tightly, but to treat them gently, to remember that time was more than minutes and hours. It was also hope and rest, and the soft decision to begin again. The kettle on the stove made a small, contented sound. Tomas poured himself a cup of tea, the steam rising in pale curls that caught the lamplight and turned silver. He held the cup in both hands, feeling warmth seep into his fingers, and for a long moment he stood in the center of his workshop, simply listening. The clock's ticking filled the air like quiet rain. Outside, the snow fell in its own steady rhythm, a softer ticking against the world. Between the two rhythms, time felt gentle and safe. He did not feel pulled forward. He felt held. When he finished his tea, he moved toward the door and began to close the shop. He dimmed the lamp slightly, leaving enough light for the clocks to glow softly in their places. He checked the latch on the back cabinet, tightened the string that held a small bundle of papers together, and placed his traveling box near the door. Then he stepped out into the front room and pulled on his heavier coat, the wool thick and familiar. As he did, He glanced once more at the wall clock. Its hands were approaching the early evening hour. There was time yet before midnight, but it would come as surely as the snow came, and Thomas intended to meet it with calm, with readiness, and with a lantern flame steady in his hand. He opened the shop door and felt the cold air greet him like clean water. Snowflakes landed softly on his sleeves and the brim of his hat. The street was quiet, the town hushed, yet not empty. Candlelight still glowed in windows, paper lanterns still swayed, and somewhere in the distance, a voice laughed softly, then faded into the night. Thomas stood under the eaves for a moment, breathing in the cold, watching the soft fall of snow. The last evening of 1900 stretched before him like a smooth white path. He stepped onto it slowly, carrying his tools and his notebook, ready to move through Lantern Hill and help its quiet clocks cross into the new year together in peace. Thomas walked slowly at first, letting his eyes adjust to the deeper night and the soft, silver drift of snow. The air held that clean winter scent that seemed to rinse the mind, as though each breath could smooth away a day's small worries. Under his boots, the snow gave a muted crunch, gentle rather than sharp, and with each step, he left a print that looked for a moment like a small, dark hollow, then began to soften as new flakes settled into it. Lantern Hill lay quiet around him. The houses gathered close as if they, too, wished to keep warm. Candlelight glowed behind frosted windows in soft amber pools, and paper lanterns by doorways swayed lightly, their thin skins breathing in and out with the faint movement of air. He paused beneath the eaves of his shop and lit his own lantern, shielding the match with practiced care. The flame flared briefly, bright and eager, then gentled into a steady glow behind the glass. The lantern's light spread outward in a warm circle, turning the nearest falling flakes into tiny sparks that drifted down like slow golden dust. Thomas held the lantern slightly forward, not high, not low, simply in the comfortable way of someone who had carried it through many winters. Its warmth pressed softly into his palm through the metal handle, and that small heat felt reassuring, like a quiet companion. The lane that led from the square to the hillside houses was already half buried, but it was familiar to him, mapped in his muscles and memory. He moved at an even pace, unhurried, as though he were walking through a dream where distance is measured gently. The town's sounds were few. Once, far off, he heard the faint scrape of a shovel. Once, nearer, the soft clink of a latch as a door was pulled shut. Mostly, there was only the whisper of snow, and beneath it, a faint sense of the town's many clocks continuing their steady work behind walls. Thomas listened in the way he always did, not for one specific tick, but for the collective rhythm, the quiet pulse of time held in dozens of rooms. It was comforting to know it was there, like a heartbeat that did not need attention to keep beating. As he reached the first bend, the square opened behind him in a gentle widening of space. The church tower rose dark against the deep blue sky, its outlines softened by falling snow. A faint glow showed in one of the tower's small windows, where someone had likely tended a stove or checked the mechanism. Tomas did not stop, but he lifted his gaze briefly, acknowledging the tower in the quiet way one acknowledges a steady friend. Then he turned his eyes back to the lane ahead, where the snowbanks rose smooth along either side and the roofs leaned over like white shoulders. The homes along this lane were modest and close together, built from timber and stone, each with a narrow porch or a small stoop. Many had hung paper lanterns for the turning of the year. Simple lanterns, not extravagant. Their frames made of thin wood, their paper stretched carefully and painted with small, delicate patterns. Some showed a crescent moon. Some showed pine branches. Some had only a simple star, a single bright shape that looked like a wish held gently in place. In the lantern light, these patterns glowed softly, and the paper seemed almost alive, breathing warmth into the cold air. Tomas liked them. They made the street feel cared for, and care, he believed, was one of the quietest forms of magic. At one doorway, a lantern burned particularly warmly, its glow spilling onto the snow at the threshold like honey. Tomas recognized the house at once. It belonged to Mrs. Elowyn Hart, an elderly widow whose clock had been losing a minute every day since the last deep freeze. She had asked him earlier, shyly, if he could come when the evening was calm, because she did not like the idea of a clock crossing midnight alone and slightly behind. Tomas had smiled then, and he smiled now, seeing her lantern's welcoming glow. He approached the door and knocked softly, careful not to make a sharp sound in the stillness. He waited, listening. Inside, he heard the faint shuffle of slippers and the quiet creak of floorboards. The door opened a crack, and warm air slipped out, scented with tea and something baked long ago, perhaps a loaf wrapped and saved for the holiday. Mrs. Hart's face appeared in the gap, lined gently by years, her eyes bright in the lamplight. "Mr. Marlowe," she said, her voice low and kind. "You've come through all that snow." "It is a gentle snow," Tomas replied, and he meant it. "May I come in?" She opened the door wider, and the light from her inner candle fell across the snow at his feet. He stepped inside and felt warmth wrap him at once, not a heavy heat, but a steady one, like a blanket placed carefully over shoulders. The small hallway led into a kitchen where a single candle burned on the table, its flame steady, its light turning the room into a soft pool of gold. A kettle sat near a stove, not boiling, just quietly warm. The walls held the calm clutter of a lived-in space, a shelf with cups, a folded cloth, a small vase with dried herbs. In the corner stood the clock, an old piece with a round face and dark wooden casing. Its pendulum swung with a slow grace, but Tomas could hear at once that its tick had a faint unevenness, like a breath that caught slightly before relaxing again. Mrs. Hart watched him with the gentle seriousness of someone who understood that small things matter. Tomas set his lantern on a stool near the door and opened his traveling box on the table. He did not rush. He removed his coat and scarf, folding them neatly over the back of a chair. Then he moved toward the clock, leaning close, his head slightly tilted, his ear attentive. He listened as one might listen to a distant lullaby, not counting seconds, but sensing rhythm. The clock ticked, the pendulum swung. The sound was almost right, and that almost was the thing Thomas had always known how to find. "It is not unhappy," he said quietly, more to the clock than to the woman. "Just a little tired in the cold." Mrs. Hart's mouth softened into a smile. "Aren't we all?" she murmured. Thomas opened the clock's small door and let the candlelight fall into its interior. The brass parts gleamed faintly. He adjusted the pendulum's length with a careful twist, so small a movement it was almost invisible. And then he added the tiniest drop of oil to a point where metal met metal. He touched nothing else. He believed in doing only what was needed and no more. The clock seemed to respond at once, its tick smoothing into a more even pace, its rhythm settling as if relieved. Thomas closed the door gently and listened again. This time the sound was calm and consistent, like a steady heart. Mrs. Hart exhaled softly, as if she had been holding her breath without realizing it. "Thank you," she said. "It feels quieter." "It will keep with the others now," Thomas replied. He took his little notebook from his pocket and, as he always did, wrote her name and the small adjustment he had made. Mrs. Hart poured a little tea into a cup and slid it toward him without a word, a simple offering. Thomas accepted it with a nod, warming his hands around the cup. The tea was mild and fragrant. The kitchen felt safe and still. Snow tapped softly against the window, and frost patterns along the glass caught the candlelight and turned it into thin white lace. They sat for a moment in companionable quiet, the clock ticking steadily beside them. In that quiet, Mrs. Hart's eyes drifted toward the window where her paper lantern glowed outside. "It's strange," she said at last, her voice almost a whisper, "how a turning of a year makes the heart want to be gentle." Thomas looked at her, attentive, as he always was when someone spoke from the deeper places. "Yes," he said simply. She smiled, and for a moment she seemed younger, as if the warmth of the room and the steadiness of the clock had smoothed a line or two from her face. "I don't ask for much," she continued, "just quiet mornings, a little sunlight, and to feel that the nights are kind." Thomas wrote nothing yet. He let her words settle. Then he opened the notebook again, and, in a separate place where he kept wishes, he wrote, "Quiet mornings, a little sunlight, nights that are kind." He did not show her. He did not need to. The act of writing was his own small ritual, a way of honoring the softness people carried. When he finished, he closed the notebook and held his cup again, feeling its warmth. After he drank, he stood and gathered his things. Mrs. Hart walked him to the door, and as he stepped out, the cold air kissed his cheeks, gentle and clean. Her lantern glowed above him, and for a moment The warm light from inside and the warm light from the paper lantern seemed to wrap him together in a small pocket of gold. "Happy New Year, Mr. Marlowe," she said, her voice steady. "And to you," Tomas replied. "May your clock be kind." He smiled as he said it, because he knew what he meant. Then he stepped back into the snow, his lantern in hand, the town's quiet waiting around him. The night felt even calmer after leaving her house, as if the simple act of setting one clock right had smoothed a small wrinkle in the town's fabric. Tomas walked onward, letting the lantern's light guide him along the lane. The snow continued to fall in soft, slow flakes, and above, the sky showed faint clearings where a few stars peeked through, pale and patient. The paper lanterns along the street swayed gently, their glow turning the snow beneath them into warm tinted shadows. Tomas passed one window where a child's face appeared briefly, round and curious, watching his lantern as it moved along the road. The child's breath fogged the glass in a small cloud. Then the face disappeared, leaving only the warm smear of candlelight behind the frost. He turned toward the next house on his list, feeling his tools settle against his side, hearing the faint creak of the box strap, sensing the steady weight of the notebook in his pocket. Somewhere ahead, another clock waited to be listened to. Somewhere ahead, another room held warmth and a quiet wish. Tomas kept his pace slow and even, his lantern glow steady, moving through Lantern Hill as the last evening of 1900 deepened into a soft, snowy night. Tomas moved onward through the lane with the same unhurried steadiness, as though he were following a gentle thread laid out for him by the town itself. The snow deepened in places where the wind had pressed it into soft banks, and in other places it lay smooth and level, like a pale cloth drawn carefully over the street. His lantern swung only slightly, its glow steady in the glass, and wherever its light touched, the snow seemed to soften further, shifting from cool blue-white to warm cream. Ahead, the houses sat close together, their roofs rounded under thick drifts, their eaves hung with small icicles that caught and released the lantern's light in delicate, trembling glints. A chimney here and there exhaled a thin ribbon of smoke, faintly scented with pine, and the smoke rose lazily, as if it did not wish to disturb the sky. He reached a narrow stone path that led up to a cottage tucked slightly above the lane. The path had been cleared earlier, but the falling snow had begun to reclaim it, filling the shovel marks with a soft new layer. Tomas recognized the place at once. The cottage belonged to the Linden family. Not wealthy, not poor, simply warm-hearted and steady. They had 2 small children and a grandfather who liked to sit near the stove with a book balanced on his knee, drifting in and out of sleep as the house breathed around him. Their clock had been good for years, but earlier in the week Mrs. Linden had mentioned, with a faint worry, that it had begun to hesitate, as if unsure of its own courage. When the cold grew sharp, Tomas climbed the short path slowly, placing his boots carefully. Snow brushed his coat, and he felt the quiet tug of winter against his cheeks. yet he did not mind it. He liked the way cold air made a warm room feel more welcoming. He liked the clear contrast between outside and inside, between snow and fire, because it made the simple comforts of a home feel like small miracles. At the top of the path, a paper lantern hung beside the door, painted with pine boughs and a tiny crescent moon. Its glow was gentle, and the shadow it cast on the snow looked like soft ink washed thin. He knocked 3 quiet taps and waited. Almost at once, the sound of movement came from within light footsteps, then a pause, then the soft murmur of a grown voice soothing a child. The door opened, and warm air flowed out in a slow wave, carrying with it the scent of bread and something sweet, perhaps apples warming near the stove. Mrs. Linden stood there with a shawl around her shoulders and flour dust faintly on her sleeve, as though she had been kneading dough when she heard his knock. Her eyes brightened when she saw him, and the gentle relief in her expression was immediate and honest. "Mr. Marlowe," she said, stepping aside to let him in. "I was hoping you'd come before the snow grew too deep. It is a friendly snow," Tomas replied, offering the smallest smile, and he meant it. He stepped over the threshold and felt the warmth wrap around him, not only the warmth of heat, but the warmth of life, voices, smells, the soft clutter of family. He set his lantern down near the door, and its glow mingled with the candlelight inside, creating a gentle golden atmosphere that made the cottage seem even smaller and more protected from the night outside. The kitchen was the heart of the home, as it often was in Lantern Hill. A stove glowed red behind a small iron door, its warmth rising in steady waves. A kettle simmered softly, its lid trembling now and then with a mild, contented rattle. On the table sat a bowl of dough covered with a cloth, and beside it, a plate of sliced apples sprinkled with cinnamon. A single candle burned near the window. Its flame reflected faintly in the frost on the glass, so it looked as if 2 candles were watching the snow. In one corner, 2 children sat on a rug with their backs against a chair, each holding a small wooden toy. Their cheeks were rosy, their eyes heavy with the calm that comes when a house is warm and night is deep. They looked up at Tomas with quiet curiosity, their gazes sliding to the lantern by the door as if it were a creature that had followed him in. Mr. Linden, the grandfather, sat by the stove with a book on his lap. He lifted his head when Tomas entered, his eyes clear though softened by sleep. "The watchmaker," he said, voice low and approving. "Come to teach our clock its manners again?" Tomas's smile deepened slightly. "Only to help it feel steady," he replied. He removed his coat with slow care, folded it over the back of a chair, and set his traveling box on the table. He worked quietly, as though the house itself might be resting. Mrs. Linden poured him a cup of tea without asking, as if it were part of the ritual of his visits, and he accepted it with a small nod. The tea warmed his hands, and he allowed himself one long breath of appreciation before he moved toward the wall clock that hung above a shelf of cups. The clock was modest, its wooden casing dark and smooth with years of polishing. Its face was round and clean, the numbers slightly worn at the edges from long familiarity. The pendulum swung behind a small glass panel, its movement usually calm and consistent. Tomas leaned close and listened. The tick was there, steady for a few beats, then a faint hesitation, a tiny pause that was almost imperceptible. Yet, to Tomas, it stood out clearly, like a stutter in a lullaby. He closed his eyes briefly, letting the sound settle into him, then opened them and watched the pendulum swing. It was not the pendulum itself that faltered. It was deeper than that. A gear was catching slightly, perhaps a small tooth meeting a bit of dryness where oil had thinned. He opened the clock's panel gently and let the warm light from the stove reach inside. His hands moved with practiced softness. He did not need to disassemble the clock. He could feel its story without pulling it apart. He placed one finger lightly against the casing to sense the vibration. Then he reached for his oil bottle and, with the patience of someone tending a tiny garden, placed a minute drop at the point where the gear met its companion. The oil glimmered like a small bead of amber, then vanished as it spread. He waited, listening as the mechanism adjusted. The tick smoothed almost at once, the hesitation dissolving like a breath released. Mrs. Linden stood near him, hands clasped loosely at her waist, watching with quiet gratitude. "It has sounded tired," she said softly, as if it didn't want to go on. "It wants to go on," Tomas replied, closing the panel carefully. "It simply wanted to be treated gently. Machines are like people in that way. They keep their steadiness best when someone listens." Mr. Linden chuckled softly from his chair. "A philosopher with a wrench," he said, and the children smiled sleepily at the sound of his voice. Tomas returned to the table and opened his notebook. He wrote the family's name, then the small adjustment, simple and clear. Mrs. Linden set a plate before him, one slice of apple dusted with cinnamon and warmed until it looked almost golden. He took it and tasted it slowly. The sweetness spread warmly across his tongue, and with it came a sense of the evening's softness. Outside, snow continued to fall, but here, in this kitchen, time felt held and kind. The children, emboldened by his quiet presence, shifted closer. One held up a small carved horse, offering it without words. Tomas accepted the horse gently, turning it in his hands, admiring the simple craftsmanship. The wood was smooth where small fingers had worn it. "A strong horse," he said softly. "It looks like it knows the way home." The child's eyes widened slightly, pleased. "It does," the child whispered, then leaned against the other, their heads touching briefly in a sleepy nod. Mrs. Linden watched them with a tender expression. "They want to stay awake for midnight," she said, voice half amused, half affectionate. "But I think the snow has already made them dream." Midnight felt far away in this moment, yet Tomas knew it was approaching steadily, one quiet minute after another. He glanced at the clock now, and its hands moved calmly, no longer pausing. The pendulum's swing looked like a slow, soothing breath. It was a comfort to see it. He imagined the town's many clocks doing the same, each one keeping its pace, each one preparing to cross the threshold of the year in gentle harmony. Mr. Linden shifted in his chair, the book sliding slightly on his lap. "In my youth," he said, voice low and thoughtful, "we welcomed the new year with noise. Pots banged, bells rang hard, men shouted into the night as if the year were a wild thing to chase away. But I've grown to like this." He gestured faintly toward the quiet room, the sleeping children, the soft candle, this gentle kind of turning. Mrs. Linden nodded, her gaze drifting to the frosted window where the candle's reflection glowed. "The new year feels softer when it comes quietly," she murmured, "like fresh snow. Clean, light." Tomas felt the words settle inside him. Fresh snow, clean, light. He had heard people describe time as heavy, as relentless. But in moments like this, he understood another truth. Time could also be tender. It could arrive softly and give the heart room to rest. He reached for his notebook again, not to write about the clock, but to honor something deeper. When people spoke like this, it was a kind of wish, even if they did not name it as one. Mrs. Linden's voice lowered further, as if she were speaking to the candle rather than to him. "If I could ask for one thing," she said, "it would be peaceful days, not grand ones, just peaceful and safe nights for the children." Tomas looked at her with steady attentiveness, and in his chest he felt a quiet warmth, not the warmth of the stove, but the warmth of shared human gentleness. He wrote in his notebook, beneath the earlier wish, "Peaceful days, safe nights for the children." He did not make a show of it. He simply wrote, as if he were placing her words carefully on a shelf where they would not be knocked over. When he finished, he closed the notebook and rose. The visit had been brief, yet it felt full, like a cup filled to the brim without spilling. He gathered his coat, slipped his scarf around his neck, and returned his tools to the box. "Mrs." Linden walked him to the door, and one of the children, roused slightly, lifted a hand in a slow, sleepy wave. Tomas waved back, equally slow, as if waving might be too loud if done quickly. At the threshold, warm air met cold air in a gentle, invisible seam. Snow lay piled on the step, and beyond it, the lane glowed faintly under the lanterns. "Mrs." Linden held the door open a moment longer than necessary, as if reluctant to let the warmth escape, or perhaps reluctant to let Tomas return to the cold. "Thank you," she said, simply. "It is a kindness to be welcomed," Tomas replied. He stepped out, lifted his lantern, and felt its small, steady warmth in his hand again. Behind him, the door closed softly, the house returning to its quiet life. Through the window, he saw the candle still burning, its flame calm. The clock above the cups ticked evenly now, keeping gentle time for sleeping children and for a new year that would soon arrive like fresh snow settling into place. Tomas turned and continued down the lane, his footprints marking a slow path through the white. The town remained quiet and safe around him, each house a small island of warmth, each lantern a gentle star brought down to earth. He carried with him the scent of cinnamon and tea, the sound of a steady tick, and the soft weight of wishes written in his pocket. Somewhere ahead, another doorway waited, another room of warmth, another clock that needed only a listening ear and a gentle hand. The lane curved downward again, returning Tomas to the town's quieter heart, where the houses clustered closer and the snow seemed deeper because it had fewer winds to push it aside. The night had grown richer in color, the sky a deep blue violet that felt soft to look at, as if it were made of velvet stretched gently over the mountains. Snow continued to fall in slow, careful flakes, and whenever Tomas lifted his lantern slightly, the flakes became a small field of drifting sparks. He walked with the same steady rhythm, not thinking of distance so much as of the calm sequence of homes and clocks, of warm thresholds and quiet rooms, of the gentle, unseen thread connecting one family's hour to the next. At the corner near the old pump, he paused to orient himself. The pump's handle was buried under a cap of snow, and the trough beside it had become a smooth, white ridge. A low fence ran along the edge of the street, its top rail turned into a single continuous line of white. Tomas's lantern light slid across it, revealing tiny crystals that glittered like crushed sugar. From here, he could see several windows glowing through frost, some bright with candles placed close to the glass, others dimmer, lit by a single flame farther inside. In the quiet, the windows looked like eyes half closed in sleep, warm behind their lashes of ice. He turned toward a narrow house with a steep roof and a small porch. A paper lantern hung by the door, painted with a simple star. The glow it gave was steady, and the snow beneath it held a faint amber tint. Tomas recognized the place as soon as he approached. It belonged to Miss Sarah Vale, the town's music teacher, who lived alone with her piano and her careful stacks of sheet music. Her clock was a small one, not grand, sitting on the mantel above the fireplace, and it had a habit of running slightly fast when the air grew dry. Earlier in the day, she had mentioned it in passing, her voice light, as if she did not want to trouble him. Tomas had noticed, as he always did, the small pause that followed her words, the way she had hesitated, then looked away, as though the clock were not the only thing she wanted steadied tonight. He knocked softly. The snow on the porch boards muffled even that, so the sound was more a gentle touch than a rap. After a moment, the door opened, and warm light spilled out. Miss Vale stood there with a shawl draped over her shoulders, her dark hair pinned neatly, her cheeks faintly pink from the warmth of the fire. "Mr. Marlowe," she said, and though her tone was calm, there was a quiet relief in it, like a chord resolving. "Good evening," Tomas replied. "May I listen to your clock?" She smiled, small and sincere, and stepped aside. Inside, her home felt like a pocket of quiet music. The fire glowed low in the grate. Candles stood on the piano, their flames reflected in the polished wood like soft duplicates. The air held the faint scent of beeswax and old paper. On a chair lay a folded shawl and a small pile of music books. The room was tidy without being cold, as if she had arranged it not for display, but for peace. Tomas set his lantern near the door and approached the mantel clock. It ticked briskly, almost eager, and he listened to it as he would listen to a tempo that needed calming. With delicate care, he adjusted the small mechanism at the back, slowing it by a fraction. He did not need much light. His fingers knew the motion, and his ear confirmed the change. The tick became less hurried, more even, settling into a pace that matched the quiet of the room. Miss Vale watched him, hands loosely clasped. "It always wants to rush," she said softly, as if it's afraid to be late. Tomas closed the clock gently. "Some things need reminding that there is time," he said, "and that time can be kind." Her gaze lowered briefly, then lifted again. "Yes," she murmured, and for a moment her face looked softened, as though a small weight had shifted. She offered him a cup of tea light, fragrant, with a hint of lemon, and they stood near the fire as snow tapped gently at the frosted window. The piano waited nearby, silent and patient. Tomas could imagine the notes it held, the lullabies and hymns she had taught the children, the quiet scales she practiced when no one listened. In the stillness, even the piano seemed like a clock of another kind, marking time in sound rather than seconds. Before he left, Miss Vale spoke again, her voice barely above the crackle of the fire. "If you write down wishes," she said, as if asking about a rumor she had heard, "write one for me." Tomas met her eyes, attentive and calm. "Tell me." She hesitated, then smiled faintly, and her words came softly, as if she were setting something delicate into his hands. "I wish," she said, "for courage that feels gentle, not loud courage, just enough to keep the heart steady." Tomas nodded, and he wrote it in his notebook with care. Gentle courage, a steady heart. When he closed the book, Miss Vale looked relieved, as though the act of naming the wish had already begun to grant it. Tomas took his coat, thanked her, and stepped back into the snow, carrying her quiet words along with him like a warm scarf. The street beyond her house felt darker by contrast, yet Tomas's lantern made a calm circle of light that moved with him like a small hearth. He walked past more windows. In one, a child's face appeared and vanished, leaving only a foggy patch on the glass. In another, an elderly couple sat close together at a table, their heads bent, the candle between them creating a soft pool of brightness over their hands. In yet another, a single candle burned on a sill with no visible movement behind it, as if that small flame were keeping company for someone who had already gone to bed. Each window seemed to hold a story, quiet and private, and Tomas felt a gentle respect for all of them. His next stop was a low house near the edge of the square, where the tailor lived with his sister. The tailor, Mr. Harrow, had hands that moved quickly when he worked, yet his voice was slow and careful. His clock, an old pendulum piece inherited from their father, had begun to lose time when the cold settled into the walls. Tomas knocked, and after a brief pause, the door opened to reveal the warm glow of lamplight and the scent of wool. Inside, the tailor's table was still set with fabric, though his needle lay resting as if the day's work had been put to sleep. A kettle murmured. The sister offered Tomas a slice of bread spread with honey, and Tomas accepted it with quiet gratitude, letting the sweetness soften the cold lingering in him. The clock stood in the corner, its pendulum moving slower than it should. Tomas listened, opened the case, and adjusted the weight. His movements were minimal, his touch gentle. The pendulum's swing steadied. The tick grew clearer, more confident, as if relieved to be heard. Mr. Harrow watched with a kind of reverence, as though time itself were being mended. "My father used to say," the tailor murmured, "that a good clock makes a house calmer." Tomas nodded. "A good rhythm does," he said, "and houses are full of rhythms." The sister, who had been quiet until then, spoke softly. "If you write wishes." She paused, as though shy of her own voice. "Write that we may keep our small peace, that the year may be gentle." Tomas wrote it down. A gentle year, a small peace kept. He did not look up at them as he wrote. He knew how tender such words could feel when spoken aloud. When he finished, he closed the notebook and returned his tools to the box. Mr. Harrow clasped Tomas's hand briefly, his grip warm and grateful, then released it without fuss. Back outside, the square lay in a calm hush. Snow had smoothed it into a broad white expanse, and the church tower rose beyond, dark and steady. The bell did not ring, yet Tomas could sense its presence, the way one senses a sleeping guardian. The lampposts around the square were capped with snow, their glass panes frosted, their flames dim but still burning. The light they cast was pale gold, spreading in soft circles that overlapped and created gentle pools along the edges of the street. Tomas crossed the square slowly, his lantern's glow joining theirs. Above, clouds drifted thinly, and through a small opening, he saw a handful of stars, quiet and faint, like distant candles placed in the sky. He visited one more home near the church steps, a modest place where an elderly man lived alone. The man's clock had stopped entirely the day before, not broken, just stilled, as if it had decided to rest. Tomas knocked, entered, and found the man seated by a small stove, hands wrapped around a mug, eyes thoughtful. The room was simple. A candle burned near the window. The clock sat on a shelf, silent, its hands fixed. Tomas approached it with the same respect he would offer a living creature. He opened it, checked the spring, and found it simply unwound. He wound it carefully, listening as the mechanism gathered itself. Then the tick began again, soft at first, then steady. The man exhaled, a sound like relief, and his shoulders eased. "I don't like silence in the wrong places," the man said quietly. "A fire can be silent, snow can be silent, but a stopped clock." He shook his head gently. "It makes the room feel lonely." Tomas understood. "Now it will keep you company," he said, and the man nodded. For a while, they sat in that small room, letting the clock's tick fill the air like gentle rain. Then the man, looking at the candle, spoke as if to himself. "I wish," he said, "to sleep without heaviness, just once, to sleep like a child, without a mind full of old years." Tomas wrote it down with great care. Sleep without heaviness, a child's quiet rest. He felt the weight of the wish, not heavy but tender, like a blanket folded neatly and placed on a chair. He closed his notebook, stood, and thanked the man for his warmth. At the door, he paused and looked once more at the clock. Its hands moved steadily. Its tick was soft. It sounded, to Tomas, like kindness. When he returned to the square, the night seemed even more hushed, as if each visit had added to the town's calm. Windows glowed, lanterns swayed, snow continued its slow descent, smoothing footprints, quieting edges. Tomas walked with his lantern and his notebook, feeling the wishes he carried in his pocket like small, warm stones. They were not loud hopes. They were not grand demands of fate. They were gentle wishes for peace, for courage that did not shout, for safe nights, for sleep that felt light. Tomas believed such wishes mattered. He believed they made a town softer from the inside. As he left the square and turned toward the river road, he felt the air shift slightly, a faint whisper of wind that carried the clean scent of ice. The frozen river waded beyond the houses, and along its bank lanterns had been placed for the turning of the year. Tomas tightened his scarf, lifted his lantern a little higher, and continued forward at the same calm pace. The night was still young enough to hold more quiet tasks, and time, steady now in so many homes, flowed gently beside him like a slow silver stream. The road that led to the river fell away from the square in a gentle slope, narrowing between snowbanks that rose like quiet walls on either side. Tomas walked down it slowly, feeling the air change as he descended. Near the clustered houses, the night had been warmed by chimney smoke and candlelit rooms, scented faintly with bread and tea and wool. Here, closer to the river, the air grew cleaner and sharper, touched by ice and open space. The cold was not cruel. It was simply clear, like glass. It made each sound more distinct and each light more precious. Ahead, the river lay hidden behind a low ridge of snow and brush, but Tomas could already sense it by the way the wind moved slightly more freely, slightly more damp, carrying the faint mineral scent of water locked beneath winter's seal. Lantern Hill's river curved along the town's edge like a silver ribbon, and in summer it sang over stones and carried the laughter of children. In winter, it became another kind of song, quieter and deeper, held in stillness. Tonight, for the turning of the year, the townsfolk had placed lanterns along the bank, not in a crowded line, but at gentle intervals, as if each flame needed room to breathe. When Tomas reached the top of the small ridge and stepped down toward the river path, The lanterns came into view one by one. They were simple glass and metal lanterns, some square, some rounded, each set on a short wooden stake or a flat stone so it would not sink into the snow. Their flames glowed steadily behind frosted panes, and the light they cast fell onto the snow in small pools of amber and gold. Between those pools, the snow returned to its cool blue-white, and the alternating warmth and coolness created a soft, rhythmic pattern like a gentle heartbeat along the bank. The river itself was mostly frozen, its surface covered with a skin of ice thick enough to hold the winter still. Over the ice lay a dusting of snow, thin in some places, deeper in others where the wind had gathered it. In the center, where the current was strongest, there were faint, dark lines beneath the ice, like quiet veins, reminding the eye that water still moved below. Where the river widened, the ice caught the lantern light and reflected it back in long, soft streaks, making it seem as though golden ribbons were laid across silver glass. Tomas stood for a moment and watched, his lantern held close to his body. The scene felt both real and dreamlike, as if the town had placed its lights here not only for guidance, but to offer the night something beautiful to hold. He walked closer to the first lantern in the row and knelt carefully, letting his knees sink into the snow. The flame inside burned, but the glass around it had fogged slightly with frost. Tomas brushed the outer surface gently with his gloved hand, clearing a small patch so the light could shine more clearly. It brightened at once, not because the flame grew stronger, but because the world could see it better. Tomas felt a quiet satisfaction in that. So often, he thought, light was already present. It simply needed a little clearing, a little care. He moved to the next lantern and did the same. The snow fell softly around him, landing on his sleeves and shoulders, melting slightly where the warmth of his body reached it, then freezing again in tiny crystals. Each lantern he tended felt like a small promise. He did not think of grand promises. He thought of small ones, that the path would be gentle to walk, that the riverbank would remain safe for anyone who came out to look at the stars, that the town's edge would not feel dark or forgotten. The lanterns, spaced along the river, made the open space feel sheltered, as if the cold air itself had been softened by their presence. Farther along the bank, he saw one lantern that leaned slightly, as though its stake had shifted. Tomas approached it with slow care, his boots sinking into the snow with muffled sounds. When he reached it, he steadied the lantern with one hand and pressed the stake deeper with the other, anchoring it into firmer ground beneath the snow. The lantern straightened, and its light fell more evenly onto the ice. Tomas watched the reflection settle into place, the golden streak smoothing across the silver surface like a calm brush stroke. The wind moved lightly over the river, and the lantern flames responded with small, gentle bows. The light shimmered in their glass panes, and the reflections on the ice trembled faintly, as if the river were breathing. Tomas found that movement soothing. It reminded him that nothing in the world was truly still, not even ice, not even time. Everything moved, but it could move slowly, peacefully, in a way that did not disturb the heart. He walked along the row, checking each lantern in turn. A few needed only a quick brush of frost. One needed its door latched more securely. Another had a wick that had burned slightly low, and Tomas adjusted it with a careful touch, coaxing the flame back to a steadier brightness. He worked quietly, his breath forming pale clouds that drifted away and vanished. As he tended the lanterns, he became aware of how the river path collected sounds. The town behind him was hushed, but here the stillness was of a different kind, more open, more spacious. The snow absorbed footsteps, yet the faint creak of ice beneath the river's surface carried softly through the air. A low, distant song. It was not a cracking sound that suggested danger, but a slow settling, like wood adjusting as it cooled, like a house sighing into deeper sleep. Tomas listened to it with calm curiosity, then let it fade into the background of his thoughts. He reached a point where the river curved and widened, and from here he could see the town's lights more fully. Lantern Hill lay above the bank like a gentle constellation, each candlelit window a small star. The church tower rose dark and steady, and the paper lanterns by doorways glowed like warm blossoms against the snow. Above the rooftops, the sky had cleared a little more. The clouds thinned into soft wisps, and through them, stars appeared faint at first, then clearer, scattered across the deep blue like silver seeds. One bright star stood a little apart, steady and calm, and Tomas found himself looking at it as if it were an old friend. It seemed to watch the town kindly, and the river reflected its light in a faint, trembling point. Tomas sat on a low stone near the bank, brushing snow from its surface first, and rested for a moment. His lantern sat beside him, its glow joining the lantern row's gentle light. From this quiet seat, he could see the alternating pools of gold along the path, the pale expanse of the frozen river, the dark pines beyond, their branches heavy with snow. The pines stood like guardians, silent and patient. Every needle held a small dusting of white, and when the wind moved through them, they released tiny showers of crystals that drifted down and caught the lantern light for an instant before vanishing into the larger snow. He took his notebook from his pocket, not to add another wish, but simply to hold it, feeling its familiar shape. The wishes he had written were gentle, and he liked the thought that they were resting there, safe between pages, quiet mornings, safe nights, gentle courage, sleep without heaviness. He imagined those wishes like lanterns, two small flames placed along the river of time, offering warmth in the dark stretches, guiding a person's heart back toward peace. As he sat, a faint sound came from behind him, footsteps, slow and careful. Tomas turned his head and saw a figure approaching along the path from the townside, carrying a small lantern. It was not someone moving quickly or with urgency. It was simply someone who had stepped out into the night to look at the river lights. When the figure drew nearer, Tomas recognized Mr. Harrow, the tailor, his coat pulled tight, his face partly hidden by a scarf. He raised a hand in greeting, and Tomas returned the gesture. "Couldn't sleep?" Tomas asked softly, as the tailor came to stand a respectful distance away. "Not yet," Mr. Harrow replied, his voice muffled but calm. He looked along the lantern row, his eyes reflecting the warm light. "It's beautiful," he added, "like the river is wearing a necklace." Tomas smiled faintly. "Yes," he said, "a necklace of quiet." They stood together for a moment without speaking. The snow fell, the lanterns glowed, the river held their reflections. In that shared silence, Tomas felt the comfort of companionship without the need for conversation. Lantern Hill was full of such moments, small, gentle meetings where nothing dramatic happened, yet something settled, something eased. After a while, Mr. Harrow nodded toward the town lights above. "They all look closer tonight," he said, "like the snow brings us together." "It does," Tomas replied. He thought of the way snow softened distances, quieted the spaces between houses, made every glow more noticeable. "And time brings us together too," he added, "when we agree to meet it gently." Mr. Harrow chuckled softly, then turned his gaze back to the river. "Do you think the new year will feel different?" he asked, not as a serious question, but as a kind of wondering. Tomas considered. The lantern flames bowed slightly in the wind, then steadied again. "It will feel fresh," he said at last, "like snow that hasn't been walked on. But we will still be ourselves. We will still need warmth. We will still need rest." Mr. Harrow nodded, as though that answer satisfied something in him. After another quiet moment, he lifted his lantern and took a few steps farther along the row, leaving Tomas to his thoughts. Tomas watched him go, his figure becoming a darker shape against the glowing pools of light, then blending with the snow and the night. There was no loneliness in being left behind. The river itself was company. The lanterns were company. The stars were company. Tomas rose slowly and continued down the lantern row, checking the last few lights near the curve. By the time he reached the final lantern, the town behind him seemed even quieter, as if the homes were settling deeper into their evening routines, preparing for the slow approach of midnight. Tomas adjusted the last lantern's position slightly, ensuring it faced the path, then stood and looked out across the frozen river once more. The reflections stretched long and soft, and the distant star above the town seemed to hover like a gentle promise. He drew his scarf closer around his neck and turned back toward the town, his lantern steady in his hand. The river lights would burn through the night, guiding anyone who wandered out to breathe the cold air and look at the sky. Tomas felt calm, knowing they were tended. He walked back up the slope, leaving the river behind him, carrying with him the quiet shimmer of lantern reflections on ice and the soft certainty that the town's edges were as gently lit as its heart. Leaving the river behind felt like stepping from one kind of quiet into another. Down by the ice, The stillness had been wide and open, shaped by water and sky, and softened by the long line of lanterns glowing like gentle beads. Here, climbing back toward the town, the quiet became closer and more sheltered, held between walls and roofs and narrow streets. Tomas walked upward at an even pace, his lantern's warmth steady against his palm, his breath a pale cloud that drifted and thinned. Snow continued to fall, but it seemed lighter now, as if the storm had grown tired and wished only to settle the world more deeply into calm. The path from the river led him toward the church hill, a gradual rise that began near the square and ended beneath the shadow of the bell tower. Lantern Hill had earned its name long before paper lanterns and candlelit windows became a holiday tradition. The slope itself caught moonlight in winter and held it like silver on its snow, while in summer it shone with fireflies and the soft glow of lamplight from the homes scattered along the incline. Tonight, the hill looked almost luminous, the snow reflecting candlelight from below and the faint light of stars from above. Tomas's boots sank gently with each step, leaving prints that new flakes began to soften at once, as if the town did not wish to keep record of movement, but rather to return everything to smoothness. He reached the edge of the square again and paused. The church stood quiet, its wooden doors closed, its windows dark, except for the faintest glow in one small pane near the side, perhaps a candle left burning for comfort, perhaps simply the reflection of nearby lanterns. The bell tower rose above it, dark against the sky, a steady shape that seemed both watchful and restful. Tomas looked up at it, the way one looks up at a familiar mountain, knowing it will remain even when one is weary. He thought, briefly, of Anders in the other town's tower long ago, and smiled faintly at the memory of watchmen and clocks and the patient work of keeping time. Here, Lantern Hill's tower did not have a full-time keeper, but it did have Tomas, and it had the calm devotion of the mechanism within, turning quietly, faithfully, through winter nights. A narrow side door led into the tower's base, and Tomas had a key that fit its lock. The priest had given it to him years ago with simple trust, because everyone understood that time was one of Tomas's gentle responsibilities. He stepped into the small, sheltered entryway and closed the door behind him, and at once the wind softened, replaced by a deep stillness that felt older than any snow. The air inside was cool but not biting, scented faintly with aged wood and stone. In the dim light from his lantern, the rough texture of the walls appeared and vanished, and the narrow stair that spiraled upward seemed to wait patiently for his feet. He began to climb. His lantern lit each step in a warm circle that moved with him, revealing worn grooves where countless feet had passed through decades of seasons. The stair creaked softly beneath him, a slow, friendly sound, not alarming but comforting, like an old house speaking in its sleep. As he ascended, the outside world fell away, the candlelit town, the river lanterns, the soft hush of snow. Those became distant impressions, while the tower's interior took his attention. The steady scent of wood, the quiet echo of his own breath, and beneath it all, a faint mechanical presence, like a heartbeat carried through beams. Halfway up, he stopped at a small landing and listened. There it was, the town clock's rhythm, steady and calm, a deeper tick than the smaller clocks in homes, slower and more resonant. It did not rush. It did not hesitate. It simply moved, patient as snowfall. Tomas closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sound settle into him. He had always found comfort in large, reliable rhythms. They made the mind feel less scattered. They reminded the heart that it could rest. He climbed the remaining steps and reached the clock room, where the mechanism sat behind a protective railing. Tomas lifted his lantern slightly, and the light revealed a scene that always felt, to him, like quiet magic. The gears were large and dark, their metal surfaces softened by age, yet they still caught the lantern light in thin, warm glints. The pendulum swung in a slow arc, left and right, and each swing seemed to smooth the air. A weight hung from a rope, descending so gradually that it was almost imperceptible. Yet it was the weight's patient fall that fed the clock's movement, turning gravity into time. Tomas approached with the calm reverence he always felt here. He did not think of the mechanism as merely metal. He thought of it as a gentle guardian, an unseen shepherd guiding the town's hours. In winter, when clouds hid the sun and snow blurred the sense of passing days, this clock reminded Lantern Hill of its steady progression. Not in a harsh way, but in a reassuring one. It rang the bell for morning, it rang for noon, it rang for evening, and tonight it would ring for midnight, marking the soft turning between one year and the next. He set his lantern on a small shelf and opened his traveling box, though he already knew what he would likely find. The cold could stiffen oils, the damp could whisper into wood and make it swell. A storm could subtly shift a beam. The clock had been faithful all season, yet tonight it deserved attention, not because it was failing, but because it was important. Tomas leaned in and listened again, close enough now to hear the tiny variations within the larger tick. He heard steadiness. He also heard, faintly, a dryness, at one point, a small rasp that might grow if left uncared for. It was like hearing a throat clear itself once, quietly, asking for water. Tomas took up the oil bottle and applied a single, careful drop to the place where the gear met its pivot. He waited. The rasp faded. The tick returned to pure smoothness, each beat deep and gentle. He touched the rope that held the weight and felt its tension, firm and steady. He checked the alignment of the pendulum's swing and found it true. Then he looked up toward the bell housing above, where the bell sat, heavy and silent, its mouth facing down like a sleeping creature. The bell did not need much, but Tomas liked to know its clapper moved freely. He climbed a short ladder and tested it gently. The clapper swung with a soft, solid movement, ready to speak when called. For a while, he simply stood in the clock room, letting the peace of it fill him. Through a narrow slit of a window, he could see out over the town. The view was muted by snow and darkness, yet the candlelit windows were visible as small points of warm gold scattered below. The lantern row by the river traced a faint line along the town's edge, like a quiet border of light. Above, the sky opened more fully now, clouds drawn aside into thin ribbons. Stars were clearer, and the bright solitary star that had been watching earlier shone with calm steadiness. Tomas felt, in that moment, that the town was held between two gentle rhythms: the slow swing of the pendulum within the tower and the slow drift of snow outside, both steady, both soothing. He glanced at the clock face from within, where the hands were visible through the mechanism. The time moved toward late evening. Midnight was still some hours away, yet it approached as patiently as the weight descended. Tomas did not feel urgency. There was still work to do, still homes whose clocks must align, still lanterns whose flames must remain steady. Yet, standing here, he felt that the most important thing, steadiness, was already present. The tower clock was true. The bell was ready. The town's heartbeat was calm. He took his notebook out and, without writing a wish, wrote a simple line. Tower clock checked, bell ready, rhythm steady. It was not poetry, yet it pleased him to set the facts down, as if by doing so he anchored the calm in place. Then he closed the notebook and slipped it back into his pocket, feeling its familiar weight against his coat. Before he left, he lifted his lantern again and climbed the final steps to the small open platform just beneath the bell. The tower here was colder, the air thinner, and he could hear the wind more clearly as it moved around the wooden beams. Yet the cold was clean and gentle. He stepped carefully to the railing and looked out. Lantern Hill spread below like a small constellation, each candlelit window a star. Snow fell softly, but the flakes seemed finer now, more like a glittering dust. The river was a pale curve in the distance, reflecting faint gold where the lanterns burned. The mountains stood dark and quiet, their outlines softened by drifting cloud. Above them, the sky held its stars, and the bright one that seemed to hover over the town shone like a calm eye. Tomas felt a quiet gratitude rise in him, not dramatic, not heavy. It was simple. Gratitude for warm homes, for steady clocks, for lanterns that held their flame, for snow that softened the world instead of harming it. He rested his hands on the railing and breathed slowly. The air tasted of winter and pine. It made his lungs feel clear and his thoughts feel smooth. In that gentle clarity, he found himself thinking again of the wishes he carried in his notebook. They were not demands. They were small hopes spoken softly in warm rooms. Peaceful days, safe nights, gentle courage, sleep without heaviness. Tomas imagined those wishes rising like chimney smoke, curling into the night, joining the snow and stars. He imagined them drifting over the town like a warm, invisible blanket. After a time, he stepped back from the railing, careful not to linger too long in the cold. He descended into the clock room again and took up his lantern. The gears continued their calm turning. The pendulum continued its slow swing. The tower felt like a pocket of steadiness tucked into the town's heart. Tomas closed the small door behind him and began the slow descent down the spiral stairs, his lantern light moving ahead of him like a gentle guide. With every step, the ticking followed him, deep and steady, until he reached the bottom and the sound became muffled by walls and distance. When he opened the tower door and stepped back into the night, the town greeted him again with its candlelit quiet. Snow brushed his coat. The square lay smooth and pale. The lanterns along the street burned steadily, their flames protected behind glass. Tomas paused briefly at the foot of the tower and looked up once more, as if to thank it. Then he turned toward the streets, his mind calm, his hands warm around the lantern handle. The bell tower's patient hour had been tended. The town's central rhythm was steady. Now the rest of the evening could unfold gently, one quiet visit, one soft adjustment, one warm doorway at a time, until the hour before midnight arrived and the whole town held its breath together in a peaceful, snow-lit hush. When Tomas stepped away from the church hill, the town felt as though it had settled into a deeper layer of quiet. The tower behind him held its steady ticking, and the bell above remained silent for now, waiting with patient certainty. Snow still fell, but it seemed to fall more slowly, as if the night itself had decided to soften its motions in these final hours of the year. Lantern Hill's streets lay smooth under white, the edges of steps and fences rounded into gentle curves. The lamps along the square glowed pale gold behind frosted glass, and the paper lanterns by doorways swayed with the faintest movement of air, breathing warmth into the cold. Tomas walked with his lantern held close, letting its light guide him along the familiar paths. He did not hurry. Midnight would come at its own pace, one calm minute after another, and the town did not need rushing. It needed steadiness. It needed gentle care. He passed the bakery, now closed, its window dark except for a single candle left burning inside, as if the room wished to keep company with its own warm scent of flour and sugar. He passed the small general store, its door latched. A lantern hung above it like a quiet star. On the far side of the square, he saw a narrow lane where fresh shovel marks showed someone clearing a path, not because it was necessary, but because movement itself could feel comforting on a night like this. As the hour before midnight drew nearer, more lights appeared behind windows. Some families, who might have blown out candles earlier on ordinary nights, kept them burning now, letting the glow gather in their rooms as if they wished to hold the evening gently in their hands. Tomas saw silhouettes moving behind frost. A woman setting cups on a table, a man lifting a child to look out at the snowfall, an elder leaning near the stove with hands clasped around warmth. Now and then, a door opened briefly and warm air slipped out, scented with tea, wood smoke, and baked fruit. Voices drifted softly, never loud, never sharp. They were the kind of voices people used when they did not want to wake a sleeping child, or when they felt the night was sacred in its quiet way. Tomas turned toward a small house at the edge of the square where he knew an old couple lived, the Bennets, who had been in Lantern Hill since before Tomas was born. Their clock was an heirloom, tall and solemn, and it kept good time if treated kindly. Tonight, they had asked him not because it was broken, but because they liked the comfort of knowing it would strike midnight true. He knocked gently, and the door opened almost at once. Warm lamplight spilled out, and Mr. Bennet's lined face appeared, smiling softly. "Come in, Tomas," he said, as if Tomas were family. "We were just listening to it." Inside, the house was calm and dim, lit by lamps and a few candles placed carefully around the room. Mrs. Bennet sat in a chair with a knitted blanket over her knees, her hands resting on it, her eyes gentle and bright. The tall clock stood near the corner, its face pale in the lamplight, its pendulum swinging with slow grace. The ticking filled the room like quiet rain. Tomas approached it and listened, his head tilted, his hands still. The clock's rhythm was steady, but he could hear the faintest unevenness, not enough to truly call it wrong, yet enough to know it would comfort them if smoothed. He opened the clock's case and made the smallest adjustment, a slight shift of the weight and a careful touch of oil where the movement asked for it. He closed the case again and listened. The tick became even, soothing, patient. Mr. Bennet exhaled, as if the sound itself had eased something in his chest. Mrs. Bennet smiled, her gaze drifting toward the clock face, as though she were watching the year's last minutes gather there. "We don't need much," she said softly, as if speaking to the candle flame rather than to Tomas. "Just that the bell rings, and we are here to hear it." Tomas nodded. He could have replied with something kind, but the room did not need more words. It already held enough warmth and meaning. They offered him a small glass of warm milk with honey, and he accepted it, sipping slowly while the clock's steady rhythm wrapped around them. He wrote nothing in his notebook, because the Bennets did not speak wishes aloud. Their wish was in their presence, in their quiet hands, in their simple hope to greet midnight together without hurry or noise. When Tomas left their home, the street seemed even quieter, as if the town were drawing inward. The snow had begun to thin, and in its place, the sky showed more clearly. Stars pricked through the blue-black expanse, and the bright, solitary star above the town shone with calm steadiness. Moonlight spread across the snow, turning it silver. Where candlelight met moonlight, the world took on a soft, dreamlike shimmer, cool and warm at once, as if the night were woven from two gentle threads. Tomas walked toward the lanes that climbed slightly up the hill, where the smaller houses stood close together. Here, he saw signs of quiet preparation. Some doorsteps had been cleared more carefully than usual. Some lanterns had been adjusted, their glass cleaned, their flames steadied. A few families had placed a single candle on their sill, as if offering it to the night. Tomas felt a tender admiration for these small efforts. In Lantern Hill, celebration did not always mean loudness. Sometimes it meant attention. Sometimes it meant making a room a little warmer, a clock a little steadier, a window a little brighter. As he passed one narrow house, he heard a soft sound singing, barely audible. The melody was simple and slow, not a carol, not a march, but a lullaby-like tune that drifted out through the walls and into the snow. Tomas slowed, listening. The voice was low and gentle, and it carried no performance, only comfort. He imagined someone rocking a child near the stove, singing the last of the year into sleep. The thought warmed him. It made the approaching midnight feel less like an event to endure and more like a calm turning of a page. He reached the home of Miss Vale again, not to adjust her clock, he had already done that, but because the lane beyond it led him toward a small cluster of houses he had yet to visit. One of those houses belonged to a young mother whose small mantel clock had recently begun to run behind. Tomas had promised he would come, and promises to him were like clock springs. They needed to be kept gently, faithfully. He knocked, entered, and found the room lit by a single lamp, dim and soothing. A baby slept in a cradle near the fire, their small breath steady. The mother spoke quietly, as though her voice might disturb the air itself. Tomas adjusted the clock with minimal movement, then glanced at the sleeping child and felt his heart soften. In the notebook, he wrote no wish. But as he stepped back into the snow, he carried the image of that tiny sleeping face like a silent blessing. The town's clockwork, both large and small, seemed to settle as midnight drew nearer. Tomas imagined it. Dozens of clocks ticking in different rooms, their rhythms now closer to one another because he had listened and adjusted with care. The tower clock above them all swung its pendulum slowly, steady as a winter breath. The river lanterns burned along the frozen bank, their reflections stretched across the ice like golden paths. Paper lanterns swayed at doorways, their painted moons and stars glowing softly. Above, the real moon hung pale, and the real stars watched quietly. Lantern Hill felt like a place suspended between worlds, between old year and new, between snow and sky, between candle flame and moonlight. As the hour narrowed, Tomas found himself walking without a list now. He had visited the homes that had asked for him. He had checked the river lanterns. He had tended the bell tower clock. What remained was not work, but presence. He wandered slowly through the square again, his lantern light pooling over the snow, and he noticed how the town itself seemed to be waiting, not tensely, not impatiently, just waiting in a soft, mindful way. Doors were closed, yet behind them, life stirred quietly. A cup was lifted, a blanket was adjusted, a candle was moved closer to the window, a hand rested gently on another hand. These were the motions of people who did not need fireworks to feel the meaning of a night. They needed only the warmth of their rooms, the steadiness of time, and the soft knowledge that the year would turn whether or not they shouted at it. Tomas paused near the center of the square, where the snow lay smooth and untouched, except for a few softened footprints. He looked up toward the tower and listened. He could not hear the ticking from here, but he could feel it in his mind like a remembered rhythm. He imagined the pendulum swinging, the gears turning, the weight descending. He imagined the bell waiting above, its clapper still, its metal cold and heavy, yet ready to sing when the moment came. He held his lantern close and watched the snow drift down through the pale light of the street lamps. The flakes moved so slowly now, as if reluctant to disturb the hush. They seemed to float rather than fall. In that quiet waiting, Tomas felt something gentle and expansive unfold in him. The old year, with all its ordinary days and small sorrows, its warm meals and cold mornings, its quiet work and quiet rest, seemed to gather itself and settle like a blanket being folded. The new year, still unseen, felt like fresh snow waiting to be walked on clean, soft, open. He thought of the wishes he had written: peaceful days, safe nights, gentle courage, sleep without heaviness, a small peace kept. These wishes were simple enough to fit into the palm of a hand, yet they felt vast in their tenderness. Tomas believed the new year should begin not with noise, but with such tenderness. A door opened on the far side of the square. A family stepped out briefly, bundled in coats, their faces turned up toward the sky. They did not speak loudly. They pointed softly at a star. Then they went back inside, closing the door carefully to keep warmth in and cold out. Tomas watched them with a faint smile. He could imagine many families doing the same, stepping out for a breath of winter air, letting snow touch their eyelashes, looking at the moon, then returning to candlelit comfort. The hour before midnight continued to narrow, and the town's quiet anticipation became almost tangible, like a soft fabric stretched gently across the air. Tomas began to move toward the church hill again, not because he needed to check the clock once more, but because he wished to be near the bell when it rang. He walked slowly, his lantern casting a warm circle on the snow, his breath steady, his mind calm. Above him, the tower waited, patient and sure, and in the deep blue sky, the bright star above Lantern Hill shone as if it, too, were keeping watch over the gentle turning of time. The climb toward the church hill took Tomas away from the square's open hush and into narrower spaces where snow pressed close to walls and the air felt sheltered. The town's lanterns and windows still glowed behind him, but their light became softer at this distance, more like a memory than a flame. He walked slowly, letting his feet find their familiar way, his lantern steady, his thoughts even and quiet. Midnight was nearing, yet the night did not tighten around it. It simply deepened, like water becoming stiller as it grows deeper. Above, The sky held its stars with calm patience, and the bright, solitary one remained fixed over Lantern Hill, as if it wished to witness the turning gently, without interruption. Tomas did not go straight to the tower. Instead, he turned down a narrow lane that curved behind the church and the row of shops, a lane most people used only in daylight. Here, the snow lay untouched, smooth as a sheet, and the walls on either side rose close, keeping the wind out. This was the path to his workshop's back courtyard, a small enclosed space that sat hidden from the street by fences and sheds. Few people ever saw it. It was not meant for visitors. It was a place for quiet tasks, splitting kindling, airing cloths in summer, storing wood under a lean-to. Tonight, it would become something else, something Tomas had been carrying within him all evening, not as an obligation, but as a private ritual. In his mind, it felt like a gentle hinge between years, a small pocket of light where he could set down his thoughts and let them rest. He unlocked a low gate and stepped into the courtyard. Snow lay thick here, untouched by footprints, unbroken, except for the slight mounding where a buried stone or a low branch shaped it beneath the surface. The courtyard was bordered by wooden fences and the backs of buildings, and beyond those fences rose the dark silhouettes of pines and the faint outline of mountains. The enclosed space made the night feel quieter still, as if the world had lowered its voice to a whisper. Tomas set his lantern on a small stump near the gate, and its glow spread across the snow in a warm oval, turning the closest crystals into tiny sparks. For a moment, he simply stood and listened, not for a sound, but for a feeling. Snow fell lightly, but here, in the sheltered courtyard, the flakes seemed to drift more gently, almost straight down, as if they were sighing into place. The air smelled of cold wood, clean snow, and the faint iron scent of the lantern. Tomas's breath rose in pale clouds that looked briefly silver in the lantern light, then vanished. The courtyard held stillness like a bowl holds water, and Tomas felt his shoulders ease, as though he had stepped into a room made for rest. He reached into the pocket of his coat and drew out a small paper lantern he had saved for this moment. It was simple, not painted elaborately like the ones on town doorways, but it was carefully made. Its paper was thick enough to hold warmth, its frame sturdy but light. He had fashioned it himself weeks ago, during a quiet afternoon when the workshop was empty. He had not known exactly why then, only that his hands had wanted to create something gentle. Now he understood. It was for this secret courtyard, for this small ritual of light. He also drew out a short candle, one he had wrapped in cloth to keep it safe. Tomas knelt in the snow, pressing his knees carefully into the soft drift. He brushed away a small circle of snow until he found firmer ground beneath, then set a flat stone there as a base. On the stone, he placed the candle in a little holder, its metal rim catching the lantern light. He did not rush. The movements were slow and deliberate, as though speed would break the quiet spell of the courtyard. When everything was ready, he struck a match and held it to the candlewick. The flame flared softly, then steadied, brightening into a warm, calm glow. The candlelight in the courtyard felt different from the lantern light of the streets. It was smaller, more intimate, less about guiding footsteps and more about warming the heart. The flame cast a faint golden halo onto the snow around it, and the snow reflected that halo back, so that the candle seemed to be sitting in a shallow bowl of light. Tomas watched it for a moment, letting his gaze soften. Candle flames always soothed him. They moved without haste, without violence, always returning to steadiness after a brief flicker. They reminded him of gentle breathing, in, out, steady, quiet, safe. He opened the paper lantern carefully and placed it over the candle so the flame would glow through the paper without being disturbed by any small draft. At once, the lantern became a warm, luminous shape in the courtyard, a soft amber glow wrapped in pale paper. The snow around it brightened. The fence boards caught faint light and showed their grain. Even the falling flakes looked warmer as they passed through the lantern's glow, turning briefly into golden flecks before sinking into the white. Tomas sat back on his heels and let the warmth of the lantern's light settle into him. The town beyond the courtyard walls still existed, clocks ticking, families waiting, the tower preparing for midnight. But here, the night felt private and tender. He took out his notebook and opened it to the pages where he had written the evening's wishes. The lines looked small and simple on paper, yet they held so much softness. Quiet mornings, a little sunlight, nights that are kind, peaceful days, safe nights for the children, gentle courage, sleep without heaviness, a small peace kept. Each wish felt like a thread of warmth, and together they formed something like a blanket. He read them without speaking aloud, letting them move through his mind in silence. Then, slowly, he closed the notebook and rested it in his lap. He did not add another wish for himself. Tomas did not often ask the year for things, yet tonight, in the hush of this courtyard, he felt a gentle desire rise simple and clear, not for wealth, not for grand changes, only for steadiness, for the ability to continue offering small care where it was needed, for his hands to remain patient, for his heart to remain soft. He looked at the lantern glowing on the snow and allowed that desire to become a kind of blessing. He did not speak it in words. He simply held it in his chest, warm and quiet. The lantern's paper skin glowed softly, and the falling snow seemed to slow further, as if listening. Tomas felt the boundary between years approach in the same gentle way he had felt it all evening, not like a door slamming, but like a curtain being drawn slowly aside. In the distance, faint and softened by snow and walls, he heard the murmur of the town, not loud voices, only the subtle stir of life, a door opening and closing, a soft laugh, the distant scrape of a boot on packed snow. The tower bell was still silent, yet Tomas felt its readiness. Time in the town was aligning. Clocks in kitchens and parlors ticked in steadier harmony. The river lanterns burned on the bank, their reflections stretched across ice. The sky held its stars. Everything seemed to lean gently toward midnight, as if the whole world were preparing to turn together in one slow, peaceful breath. Tomas shifted slightly, letting the snow support him. The courtyard cold pressed around him, but the lantern's glow warmed his face, and his wool coat held the heat of his body close. He watched the lantern and thought of how many lights were burning in Lantern Hill tonight. Not just lanterns and candles, but the softer lights inside people lights that showed in their wishes, their careful preparations, their quiet kindness. He had seen it in Mrs. Hart's longing for kind nights. He had seen it in Mrs. Linden's hope for safe sleep for her children. He had seen it in Miss Vale's desire for gentle courage. He had heard it in the elder man's wish for sleep without heaviness. Each of those hopes was a small flame. Each was fragile, yet each could be sheltered, warmed, tended. Snow continued to fall, and a few flakes landed on Tomas's eyelashes, melting briefly before freezing into tiny, cool beads. He blinked slowly and let them go. The lantern's glow made the snow in front of him sparkle faintly, as if the ground itself were studded with tiny stars. In that light, the courtyard seemed transformed. It was no longer merely a back space behind a shop. It was a small, hidden sanctuary, a quiet place where time could pause for a moment and become gentle. At last, Tomas rose, careful not to disturb the lantern. He brushed snow from his knees and stood, his boots sinking slightly into the drift. He placed his hand lightly against the fence post, steadying himself, and looked up. Above the courtyard walls, he could see a slice of sky, deep blue-black and sprinkled with stars. The bright, solitary star shone there, calm and clear. Tomas held his gaze on it for a moment and felt, in a way that did not need explanation, that the star was not only watching the town, but also watching him in this small, hidden place. He was not alone. The night itself felt companionable. He checked the lantern once more, ensuring the candle was safe beneath it. It would burn for some time, a small, warm presence in the courtyard while the town's bell rang and the year turned. Tomas liked the thought of that quiet light continuing even when he was elsewhere. It felt like leaving a gentle guardian behind, a soft flame to hold the space between years. Then he picked up his own lantern and moved back toward the gate. Before leaving, he glanced over his shoulder one more time. The paper lantern glowed on the snow like a small heart of warmth. Around it, the courtyard lay white and still, as if cradling the light. Tomas felt a quiet satisfaction, not pride, but peace. This was his private offering to the night, his way of saying to the year that was ending and the year that was coming, be gentle, be kind, keep us steady. He stepped out of the courtyard and closed the gate softly behind him. The lane beyond was still and snow-covered, and the town's candlelit glow waited at the far end. Tomas began to walk back toward the church hill, his lantern swinging slightly, his notebook warm in his pocket. Midnight was near now. The moment between 2 years was approaching, and in the hidden courtyard behind his workshop, a small lantern of New Year's light continued to glow quietly, holding its warm circle on the snow as if it were guarding a tender dream. Tomas returned toward the church hill with a quiet steadiness in his limbs, as if the small ritual in the hidden courtyard had settled his thoughts into their smoothest shape. The snow on the lane looked untouched again, where his footprints had already begun to soften beneath fresh falling flakes. His lantern cast a warm pool around his boots, and beyond that circle the world remained a gentle darkness washed in moonlight. The town's windows glowed like small embers scattered across a white field. Paper lanterns swayed at doorways in slow, patient arcs, and the pale moon hung above the rooftops with a calm, unblinking gaze. Nothing in Lantern Hill felt hurried. Even the cold seemed to move with softness, wrapping the town without biting, as though winter itself understood the tenderness of this night. Near the base of the church steps, Tomas paused. The square lay below him, smooth and pale, marked only by a few softened tracks and the low mounds of snow gathered against fences. The lamps along the street burned quietly, their flames sheltered behind frosted glass that made their light look milky and kind. Somewhere in the town, a door opened and closed with careful gentleness, letting a brief ribbon of warm air escape into the night. The sound was so mild, it seemed like a whisper, and it faded quickly into the snow. Tomas listened, and in that listening, he felt how close the town was to holding its breath, not in tension, but in a kind of calm attention, the way one listens for the final note of a lullaby. He climbed the church hill again, not quickly, but with a slow reverence, and as he came nearer the tower, he noticed small signs of quiet gathering. A couple stood near the fence line, bundled in thick coats, their faces turned up toward the sky. A child, sleepy but determined, leaned against a parent's shoulder, blinking at the snow as though trying to keep awake long enough to witness midnight. No one spoke loudly. Their voices, when they did speak, were low and soft, shaped by the same care one uses around sleeping rooms. Tomas did not interrupt them. He moved past with a small nod, a shared recognition that they were all here for the same gentle turning. He stepped beneath the tower's shadow and found a sheltered spot near the side door, where the wind was less insistent. From here, he could see the town's rooftops and the faint curve of the river beyond, where lantern reflections still lay like gold threads on ice. Above, the stars were clearer now, sprinkled across the sky like scattered silver. The bright, solitary star remained over the town, steady and calm, and Tomas felt its presence as a kind of quiet companion. He cradled his lantern close, not because he needed more warmth, but because the act itself was soothing, grounding him in the simple certainty of a flame held safely in glass. Time moved forward with the soft inevitability of snow settling. Tomas imagined the clocks in the homes below, mantel clocks ticking beside cups of tea, Tall clocks swinging their pendulums in corners, small travel clocks perched on shelves, pocket watches resting near beds. He imagined the town's tower mechanism turning patiently above him, gears meeting gears, the pendulum swinging like a slow heartbeat. In those countless small rooms, in those countless small moments, the last minutes of the year were slipping away, not sharply, not dramatically, but like a ribbon sliding through gentle fingers. The air grew slightly stiller, as if even the wind wished to listen. Snow continued to fall, yet the flakes seemed finer now, drifting like tiny pale petals rather than heavy clumps. They caught moonlight and lantern light and became briefly luminous, then vanished as they landed. Tomas watched them and felt his thoughts quiet further. This was the kind of night that asked nothing of a person except softness. It asked for slow breathing. It asked for a steady heart. It asked for a gentle willingness to let one year end and another begin without struggle. In the distance, a faint murmur rose voices from within houses, the soft sound of people counting quietly, perhaps, or murmuring New Year's greetings before the moment arrived. Tomas did not hear words clearly. The snow softened everything into a single hush, yet he could sense the warmth of those voices, the way they held hopes and comfort. He thought of the wishes in his notebook, the pages resting against his chest under his coat. The wishes felt like small seeds, warm despite the cold, waiting to take root in the New Year's days. He did not expect the year to be perfect. He did not expect life to stop bringing its ordinary difficulties. Yet he believed in the power of gentle beginnings. He believed that a year begun quietly could teach the heart to stay quiet even when the world grew loud. A subtle change came over the tower. Tomas felt it before he heard it. A tiny shift in the air, as if the mechanism above had reached a particular alignment. He lifted his gaze toward the bell housing. The bell itself remained unseen from his place, but he imagined it there, heavy and silent, waiting. The moment approached. Tomas's breath slowed further, his shoulders easing, his lantern steady. Then, at last, the bell rang. It was not a harsh clang. It was not a violent peal. The bell's voice rolled out over Lantern Hill like a warm wave, deep and resonant, softened by the snow and night air. The sound traveled gently, filling the streets, touching rooftops, slipping through chimneys, and entering rooms where people held cups and blankets. It did not command attention so much as offer it, like a slow hand extended in greeting. The first note lingered, then faded into the snow, and the second note followed, and then the third, each one spaced with patient care, each one a calm marker in the turning of time. As the bell continued its measured count, Tomas felt the town respond. Somewhere below, a door opened briefly, and someone stepped out, then another. A few soft voices rose, murmuring, "Happy New Year," in tones that sounded like whispers meant for dreams. No cheering erupted. No sudden noise shattered the night. Lantern Hill welcomed the new year as it welcomed snowfall, quietly, with a gentle acceptance, with a sense of being held. The bell's final note faded, and for a moment the world seemed to hover in a hush so complete it felt almost sacred. Tomas stood still. The snow drifted. The lantern flames along streets and riverbanks continued to glow. The tower clock continued its calm ticking, and within that stillness, Tomas felt the exact moment when the year turned, not as a dramatic boundary, but as a soft shift, like a page turning in a book without a snap of paper. It was a moment between 2 years, a thin silver seam in time, and it felt gentle enough to rest upon. He let himself breathe out slowly, and as he did, he imagined the old year leaving like a quiet guest, slipping away without fuss. It took with it all the ordinary things, the days of work, the small frustrations, the moments of tiredness, the long evenings, the brief joys. It left behind what mattered: warmth remembered, kindness offered, tenderness shared. And the new year arrived without fanfare, settling over the town like fresh snow, clean and soft, ready to hold new footprints when the time came. Around him, the small group near the hill exchanged quiet greetings. Tomas heard a child's sleepy laugh, quickly muffled as the child buried their face in a parent's coat. He heard a couple murmur a soft blessing. He heard someone say, in a voice almost too low to catch, "May it be gentle." Tomas felt those words echo in him because they matched his own silent ritual in the courtyard. May it be gentle. May it be kind. May it be steady. He took out his notebook and by the lantern's glow wrote a single line: 1,901 arrived with quiet bells and soft snow. He paused, then added beneath it, as if speaking to the year itself, "Be gentle with us." The words looked simple on the page, yet they carried weight, not heavy weight, but the tender weight of hope. For a while, Tomas remained where he was, letting the new year settle. The bell did not ring again. The night did not change abruptly. It simply continued, now with a different number in the mind's background, a different page in the unseen calendar. Snow still fell, stars still watched, candlelight still glowed. Tomas felt the calm continuity of it and took comfort. The world, he realized, did not need to announce a new year with noise. The world could welcome it with softness, and that softness could be its own kind of celebration. At last, he turned and began to walk down the hill. His lantern light moved over the snow like a small, moving hearth. As he descended, he saw more doors close gently, more figures retreating indoors, satisfied, sleepy, warmed by the bell's gentle voice. In windows, candles still burned, but some had been lowered, their flames smaller now, as if the town were ready to rest. The streets remained quiet, and Tomas's footsteps sounded like soft punctuation in a long, soothing sentence. He reached the square and paused again. The town looked unchanged, yet it felt subtly new, as if the air itself had been washed clean. The lamps and lanterns seemed warmer. The moonlight seemed softer. The snow seemed even more silver. Tomas glanced toward the river road, imagining the lantern row still glowing along the frozen bank, reflecting like gentle gold on ice. He thought, too, of the hidden courtyard behind his shop, where his small paper lantern would still be burning, quietly holding its warm circle on the snow even now, after midnight had passed. Tomas lifted his gaze to the bright star above Lantern Hill one more time. It shone calmly, neither brighter nor dimmer, simply present. He took that presence as a quiet assurance. Then he lowered his eyes, adjusted his scarf, and began to walk through the town's sleeping streets through the New Year's first minutes, carrying his lantern and his notebook, carrying the soft bell notes in his memory, carrying the tender seam of the moment between 2 years like a silver thread wrapped gently around his heart. The first minutes of the new year felt like a quiet corridor of fresh snow, smooth and unmarked, waiting without impatience. Tomas walked through them slowly, as though he did not wish to hurry away from the gentle seam of midnight. Lantern Hill lay calm around him, its houses tucked into drifts, its rooftops rounded beneath white. The bell's voice had already faded, yet its warmth seemed to linger in the air, like an echo that had settled into the town's wooden beams. Candlelight remained in some windows, softened now, smaller flames kept alive not for celebration but for comfort. Paper lanterns by doorways swayed faintly, their glow mellow and steady, as if they had grown sleepy too. Tomas crossed the square with his lantern held close, and the light moved over the snow in a warm oval that softened the blue shadows. In the open space, the night felt wide again. The stars were clearer, and the bright, solitary star above the town still shone with calm steadiness, as if it were a quiet guardian that did not sleep. The moon's pale light turned the snow silver, and where the lantern's warmth met that silver, the ground took on a gentle shimmer, cool and warm woven together. Tomas found the sight soothing. It reminded him that the world could hold two truths at once, cold and comfort, darkness and light, endings and beginnings, each balanced softly against the other. A door opened on the far side of the square, and a family stepped out, moving with careful softness. They were bundled in coats, their hats pulled low, their cheeks pink in the cold. They did not speak loudly. Instead, the father leaned down and whispered something to the child, who giggled once, a small sound that the snow immediately softened. The mother lifted her face toward the sky for a brief moment, as if greeting the new year with her eyes. Then they turned and, upon seeing Tomas, paused with friendly recognition. "Happy New Year, Mr. Marlowe," the father said quietly, as though even the greeting should not disturb the night. "And to you," Tomas replied, his voice equally gentle. He lifted his lantern slightly in a small salute. "May it be peaceful," the mother smiled, and her smile seemed to warm the air for an instant. "It already feels fresh," she whispered, and Tomas nodded because he understood. They stepped back inside, closing their door carefully, preserving their warmth, and the square returned to stillness, with only Tomas's footsteps and the faint hush of falling snow. He turned down a lane that led toward the river road, not because he needed to check the lantern row again, but because the new year's first moments felt right for that quiet path. He liked the idea of beginning 1901 with the river nearby, with ice and light, with reflections that stretched across stillness like promises. The snow on the lane was deeper here, and his boots sank softly, making each step a gentle effort that slowed him further. He did not mind. Slowness felt like a gift tonight. It gave him room to notice the small beauty of everything, the way frost patterns on window glass caught candlelight like lace, the way smoke rose from chimneys in pale ribbons that curled and drifted like sleepy dreams, the way a paper lantern's painted star glowed and then dimmed slightly as a gust of wind passed. As he walked, he found himself thinking again of the wishes written in his notebook. He could feel the notebook's weight against his chest, warm under his coat. It held a quiet collection of the town's hopes, small and tender. Tomas had not written these wishes to control the future. He had written them as one might set pebbles along a path, markers of what mattered: peaceful days, safe nights, gentle courage, sleep without heaviness. These were the kinds of wishes that could be lived into, slowly, with patient kindness. They were not wishes that demanded sudden change. They were wishes that invited steadiness. At the riverbank, the lantern row still burned, each flame steady behind glass. Tomas stopped at the top of the ridge and looked down. The frozen river lay pale and calm, its surface reflecting the lanterns in long, soft streaks of gold. The reflections trembled faintly where the wind moved, but they did not break. They simply shimmered, as if the river were breathing gently beneath its winter skin. Snow fell onto the ice in light layers, softening the reflections slightly, but not extinguishing them. The scene looked like a quiet painting, and Tomas felt his thoughts slow even further as he watched. He descended the ridge and stepped onto the river path. The cold here was clean and crisp, yet the lantern light warmed the eye, making the open space feel sheltered. Tomas walked along the row, not checking the lanterns now, simply letting their glow accompany him. He passed each one as if passing a small guardian, a small flame placed to say, "This path is safe, this night is kind, this new year begins in gentleness." He breathed in the cold air and found it soothing, like water. Above, the stars looked brighter, and the bright, solitary star hung over the town with calm certainty. Tomas imagined it as a fixed point of quiet, a reminder that even as years turn, some steadiness remains. Farther down the path, he noticed a figure standing near the bank, still and bundled, looking out over the ice. The figure held a small lantern, and its light made a warm dot in the dark. Tomas approached slowly and recognized Miss Vale, the music teacher, her shawl wrapped around her shoulders, her face turned toward the river as if listening. He did not speak at first, not wanting to break the quiet she seemed to be holding. When she sensed him, she turned slightly and smiled. "Mr. Marlowe," she said, her voice low. I couldn't sleep. The bell felt gentle, and I wanted to see the river lights after it. They are beautiful, Tomas replied. The river holds them kindly. She nodded, her gaze returning to the reflections. It feels like the town is floating, she whispered, like the lights are carrying us. Tomas stood beside her at a respectful distance, letting the open night hold them both. Snow fell softly. The lanterns glowed, the ice reflected. The world seemed quiet enough to hear the smallest thoughts. After a moment, Miss Vale spoke again, her voice almost shy. Thank you, she said, for slowing my clock, for writing my wish. I thought perhaps I would feel foolish, but I feel steadier. Tomas's lantern warmed his fingers, and he felt warmth in his chest too, tender and calm. Gentle courage is not foolish, he said softly. It is the kind that lasts. She smiled again, and her eyes glinted with lantern light, bright but not wet, simply softened by emotion. Happy New Year, she murmured. Happy New Year, Tomas replied, and the words felt like something small and warm placed into the night. They stood together for a few more moments, watching the river. Then Miss Vale lifted her lantern slightly, as if acknowledging the path of lights. I should go back, she said quietly. My students will expect me to be awake and proper tomorrow, even if it is still a holiday. Tomas's smile was faint but kind. Let tomorrow wait, he said. Tonight is still gentle. She nodded, and with a soft goodbye, she turned and walked back toward the town, her lantern bobbing lightly, her footsteps muffled. Tomas watched her until she disappeared into the falling snow, then turned back to the river once more. The reflections lay long and calm. The lantern flames bowed slightly in the wind, then steadied again. The New Year's first moments continued to unfold without drama, smooth as the ice beneath snow. Tomas began his slow walk back toward the town. The lane uphill felt quieter now, as if even the houses were asleep. Some windows still glowed with a single candle, but many had gone dark, their families having returned to beds and blankets after greeting midnight. Smoke rose from chimneys in soft lines. The snow's fall had thinned, leaving a clearer view of the sky, and the stars looked like silver pins holding the night in place. Tomas's lantern cast a warm circle that moved with him like a calm companion. When he reached the edge of the square again, he paused and looked around. Lantern Hill felt gently altered, not in appearance, but in spirit. The bell had rung, and the year had turned, and the town had done so quietly, without forcing anything. It was as if the new year had arrived already softened, already cradled by candlelight and snow. Tomas found comfort in that. He thought of the hidden courtyard behind his shop, where the small paper lantern he had placed would still be burning, holding its own quiet warmth. The idea pleased him. It made the new year feel watched over from more than one place. From the star above, from the tower clock, from the lanterns along the river, from the small flame behind his workshop gate. He turned at last toward his own street, ready to return home and rest for a while before dawn. His feet were tired in a gentle way, the way one is tired after calm, meaningful work. His mind felt smooth. His heart felt steady. As he walked, he let his thoughts drift not toward plans or worries, but toward simple images. Candlelight on frosted glass, a pendulum swinging evenly, lantern reflections on ice, the bell's deep note rolling like a warm wave through snow. These images gathered in him like soft blankets, layering comfort upon comfort. The new year continued to open quietly ahead, minute by minute, like a book whose pages were clean and waiting for gentle words. Tomas walked into it with his lantern glow steady at his side, carrying the town's hopes in his notebook and the night's calm in his breath, feeling that in Lantern Hill, at least, time could begin again in softness. Tomas's street lay quiet beneath a fresh, soft layer of snow, as if the night had taken a final, gentle breath and settled it everywhere for the new year's first hours. The houses along the lane were dark now, their windows mostly unlit, their warmth tucked inward beneath quilts and blankets. Only here and there a candle still glowed behind frost, a small amber point that seemed less like wakefulness and more like comfort. Light left burning the way one might leave a cup of tea to steep a little longer, not for urgency, but for tenderness. Tomas walked slowly, his lantern's circle of warmth moving over the snow like a calm companion, and he felt the town sleep around him as something almost tangible, like a hush laid over rooftops. He reached his workshop and paused beneath the sign that hung above the door, the painted letters, softened by snow, clinging to the wood. The building looked smaller in the quiet, more modest, as if it wished to rest as deeply as the town. Tomas unlocked the front door and stepped inside, and at once the familiar scent of oiled wood and metal greeted him, mixed with the faint sweetness of tea leaves left in a tin. He closed the door carefully behind him, keeping the cold outside without making any sharp sound. The clocks in the workshop continued their gentle chorus, ticking in layered rhythms that felt soothing rather than busy. In the warm dimness, their faces looked like calm moons, watching time move without impatience. He set his lantern on the bench and removed his coat and scarf with slow care, folding them neatly. The small work stove had long since cooled, but the room still held a lingering warmth, as if it remembered the day. Tomas poured a little water into the kettle and placed it on the stove, not to boil quickly, but to invite warmth back into the air in a mild, steady way. Then, feeling the quiet draw him outward again, he took up his lantern once more and moved toward the back door. There was one more place he wished to visit before he truly rested. Outside, the world had changed almost imperceptibly. The snow still fell, but in finer flakes, and the sky's deep blue had softened at the edges, as if pale light were beginning to gather beyond the mountains. Tomas walked around the side of his workshop to the low gate that led into the hidden courtyard. He unlocked it and stepped through, and the small enclosed space welcomed him with its private hush. The fences and back walls held the air still. The snow lay smooth, except for the faint marks of his earlier steps, already softened by new flakes. And there, near the center, the paper lantern he had placed before midnight still glowed, its warmth steady and soft, as if it had been breathing quietly in his absence. The sight of it made Thomas's chest loosen with a calm satisfaction. The lantern's light was gentler now, mellowed by time, yet still warm enough to turn nearby snow crystals into tiny sparks. He knelt beside it and looked through the paper's glow at the candle within. The flame was smaller, steady, and patient, and its light felt like a small heart continuing to beat. Thomas did not adjust it. He did not need to. He simply watched for a while, letting the quiet of the courtyard settle into him again. The new year had arrived, and this lantern had been there to greet it, holding warmth in a small hidden place where no one demanded anything of it. Thomas found that thought soothing, like a blessing spoken without words. When he rose, he did so slowly, brushing snow from his knees, and he stood for a moment with his face turned upward. Above the fences, the sky had begun to lighten. The stars were still visible, but they looked fainter now, as if they were stepping back politely to make room for dawn. The bright, solitary star remained for a little longer, calm and steady, and Thomas held his gaze on it with quiet gratitude. Then, as if responding to some gentle signal, even that star seemed to soften, less sharp, more distant, while the eastern edge of the sky gained a pale, pearl-like sheen. He closed the gate softly behind him and returned to the front of the workshop. The square and streets were still asleep, but the world was changing in small, gentle ways that could be felt more than seen. The wind had quieted almost entirely, and the smoke from chimneys where fires were kept low through the night rose in straight, delicate columns. Those thin lines of smoke looked like careful ink strokes on the paling sky. Snow on rooftops sparkled faintly as light gathered, and where Thomas's lantern moved over the drifts, its warmth seemed less alone now, because the morning itself was beginning to bring a softer brightness. Thomas walked toward the edge of the square, not far, simply to stand where the view opened toward the mountains. The church tower rose dark but gentle against the lightening sky, and the bell above remained silent, resting after its measured midnight voice. The town's lanterns still burned, but their glow looked dimmer now, not because they had weakened, but because dawn was slowly adding its own light to the world. Paper lanterns by doorways appeared less like moons and more like warm blossoms, their colors muted but still tender. Thomas found comfort in the way darkness did not vanish suddenly. It faded slowly, as if the night were tucking itself away with care. The sky continued its gradual transformation. The deep blue shifted into a softer blue-gray, then into a faint wash of lilac near the horizon. Thin clouds caught that color and turned it into gentle streaks, like brush marks on a watercolor page. Behind the mountains, pale light began to rise, not bright, not harsh, but like a soft lamp being turned up in another room. Tomas watched it and felt the new year's first dawn arrive, not as an announcement, but as a slow unfolding. It reminded him of the way a clock's hands move always forward, always steady, never rushing, simply arriving where they must. As the light grew, the snow changed too. It ceased to look merely white and began to show subtle colors, soft blues in shadow, faint pink where the sky's first warmth touched it, gentle gold where a lantern's glow still lingered. The town looked as though it were made of quiet silver and pearl. Frost on windows turned into delicate patterns more clearly visible now, and the remaining candles behind some panes flickered like sleepy eyes. Tomas imagined the families inside, wrapped in warmth, perhaps drifting back into dreams after midnight greetings. The New Year's first morning was arriving for them too, even if they did not yet see it. It would touch their rooftops, their curtains, their blankets, and it would do so softly, as if not to wake anyone too soon. Tomas drew his scarf a little closer and breathed in. The air tasted clean, cold, and fresh, with a faint hint of smoke and pine. It felt like the kind of breath that could clear the mind. He thought of the wishes he carried, and he felt, quietly, that dawn itself was answering them in its own gentle way. Quiet mornings, a little sunlight, nights that are kind. Here was the sunlight, arriving in a soft promise. Here was the morning, quiet and calm. Here was kindness in the way the world did not demand anything dramatic, only offered light, slowly, patiently. He turned his gaze toward the river road in the distance. Though he could not see the lantern row clearly from here, he imagined it still burning, reflections now paler as daylight approached, the golden streaks on ice becoming softer and less distinct. Lanterns did not need to shine forever. Their work was to guide through darkness, and now the world was being guided by morning. Tomas liked that cycle, light handing its task to another kind of light, warmth passing gently from flame to sunrise. There was something deeply reassuring in the continuity of it. A soft sound came from nearby, a door opening, then closing carefully. Tomas looked and saw, across the square, an elderly woman stepping out with a shawl around her shoulders. She did not notice him at first. She simply stood on her doorstep and looked up at the brightening sky, her face turned toward the pale dawn with a calm expression. After a moment, she lifted her hands and rubbed them together, then went back inside, closing the door with care. The small action felt like a quiet acknowledgement of the new year, not a celebration, but a gentle recognition that another day had begun. Tomas remained where he was until the first clear edge of the sun began to press light behind the mountains. It did not crest fully yet. It merely brightened the horizon into a soft band of gold, delicate and promising. He felt his eyelids grow heavy in a pleasant way, the kind of tiredness that comes after meaningful, quiet work. He had walked through the town. He had listened to clocks. He had tended lanterns. He had stood beneath the bell as the year turned. Now, the dawn was taking over, and that felt like a signal that he, too, could rest. He turned at last and began to walk back toward his workshop, his lantern still in hand, though its light now seemed almost shy in the presence of morning. The clocks inside would continue their gentle ticking. The kettle would warm. The town would wake later, slowly, to a new year laid out like fresh snow. Tomas stepped into his doorway and felt the familiar shelter of wood and warmth, carrying the pale dawn with him in his thoughts, ready to set down his lantern, open his notebook once more, and begin the new year's first quiet hours with the same steady kindness he had offered the night. Tomas returned to the heart of his workshop as the first light of the new year continued to gather outside, pale and clean, like a quiet promise laid gently over the snow. The room welcomed him with its familiar warmth of wood and old metal, and with the soft, steady chorus of clocks that had never ceased their calm work through the night. Their ticking did not feel like pressure. It felt like reassurance. It was the sound of gentle order, of minutes arranged patiently, of time moving forward without forcing anything. Tomas set his lantern on the bench and watched its flame for a moment, noticing how modest it looked now, as if it were content to let the dawn carry the larger light. He loosened his scarf slowly, as though even that small motion should be kind, and he let his shoulders drop into rest. The kettle had begun to warm, and soon it gave a mild, contented sound. Tomas poured himself a cup of tea, the steam rising in pale curls that looked silver in the early light. He held the cup in both hands and stood near the window, where frost still traced delicate patterns across the panes. Beyond those patterns, the town lay quiet and white, the rooftops softened, the streets still asleep. The sky was no longer deep blue. It had turned to pearl and faint gold near the mountains, and the new day felt gentle enough to touch without waking. Tomas sipped his tea slowly, letting warmth spread through him in steady waves, and he felt the night's long softness settle into his bones like a calm song. After a while, he set his tea down and took out his notebook. It lay heavy in his pocket in a comforting way, as if it carried not burdens, but treasures. Tomas opened it on the bench beneath the lantern's fading glow and the dawn's growing light. The pages held the wishes he had written, each line simple, each one chosen carefully from a warm room's quiet honesty. He read them again, slowly, as though reading a prayer. Quiet mornings, a little sunlight, nights that are kind, peaceful days, safe nights for the children, gentle courage, sleep without heaviness, a small peace kept. The words sat on the page like soft footprints on snow, clear enough to be seen, gentle enough not to scar. As he read, Tomas felt something in him ease further. It was as if the wishes had been waiting all night to be gathered into one calm whole. And now, in the new year's first dawn, they were ready to become more than separate lines. Tomas did not believe he could command the year to behave in any particular way. He knew life would bring its ordinary storms and its ordinary surprises, yet he also believed that gentleness, once named and carried, could shape the way a person walked through those storms. He believed that a small, quiet intention could become a lantern inside the mind, bright enough to guide, warm enough to comfort. He turned to a fresh page and wrote, in his neat, careful hand, a simple heading for the year 1901. Beneath it, he did not list tasks or plans. He wrote a few words that felt like a soft vow. Keep time kindly, keep the heart steady, offer warmth where it is needed. When he finished, he looked at the words for a moment, then closed the notebook gently, as though closing a door to a sleeping room. The act felt complete, and it made the new year feel quieter, less demanding, more like a clean page waiting for gentle ink. Tomas moved to the small window that faced the street, and with slow fingers wiped a patch of frost away. He looked out. Dawn had advanced further now, and the snow on rooftops shimmered faintly with pale gold. Smoke rose from chimneys in delicate columns, and in one window across the lane, a candle still burned, a small flame stubbornly kind. The world looked soft and newly washed. Even the air seemed lighter, as if the night's bell notes had wrung away something heavy. Tomas felt a quiet gratitude that did not need to be spoken aloud. It sat in him like a warm stone in a pocket, steady and reassuring. He thought again of the lantern row by the river. In his mind, he saw the long reflections on ice, now growing fainter as daylight increased, the golden paths dissolving gently into silver. He thought of the church tower and the pendulum swinging, steady as breath, the bell resting after its midnight greeting. He thought of the hidden courtyard behind his shop, and of the paper lantern still glowing there, perhaps dimmer now, perhaps near its final moments, yet still holding warmth faithfully. Tomas liked the idea that even as dawn arrived, some small flame had continued to burn in secret, offering a quiet companionship to the new year's first hours. He pulled on his coat again and stepped outside, not because he needed to work, but because he wished to offer a final small kindness to his own ritual. The street was still empty. The snow was soft beneath his boots. The air smelled of pine and clean cold. Tomas walked around to the back gate and entered the courtyard once more. The paper lantern still glowed, but its light was now subtle, a gentle amber within a world turning pale gold. Tomas approached and knelt. Through the lantern's paper skin, he could see the candle flame was small, steady, nearly done. It did not waver. It simply continued as long as it could, patient and calm. Tomas watched it for a while, letting the moment be slow. Then, with careful tenderness, he lifted the paper lantern and blew out the candle with a soft breath. The flame vanished without struggle, and a thin thread of smoke rose, curling into the cold air like a final whispered thought. Tomas did not feel sadness. The candle had done what it was meant to do. It had held the seam between years with warmth. Now its work was complete, and the dawn could carry the light forward. Tomas set the lantern aside, brushed snow from his knees, and stood, feeling the quiet completion settle around him like a soft cloak. He returned to the front of the workshop and stepped inside again. The clocks ticked steadily, filling the room with a gentle rhythm that seemed to match his own heartbeat. Tomas removed his coat and sat in the chair by the window. He did not open his tools. He did not plan his day. He simply sat, holding his cup of tea, listening to the layered ticking and letting the new year's first calm settle into him. Outside, the town would wake slowly. Children would stretch under quilts. Mothers would stir fires and warm bread. Elders would lift their faces to the pale sun. Someone would wind a clock. Someone would open a door and step into the snow. Lantern Hill would begin 1,901 inches, the same way it began every day, quietly, steadily, with small acts of care. Tomas's eyes grew heavier, and he let them close for a moment. In the darkness behind his lids, the images of the night gathered softly. Lantern reflections on ice, candlelight on frosted windows, a pendulum swinging in a tall clock, the bell's deep note rolling through snow. Each image moved slowly, like a dream that did not rush. His breathing became even. The ticking of the clocks did not demand attention. It soothed, like rain on a roof, like wind through pines. Tomas felt his thoughts loosen, drifting gently toward rest, and in that soft drift, he offered, in the quietest place of his mind, a blessing for the year ahead, simple, calm, and kind. May the days come gently. May the nights be soft and peaceful. May warm light always find you, even in winter. May your heart stay steady and protected, like a lantern held close in snow. May your wishes rest safely, like quiet seeds beneath silver ground. And now, as the new year breathes its first calm morning over Lantern Hill, may you, too, be held in warmth and quiet, and may you sink into deep, gentle sleep, soft, peaceful, and safe.